Hey y'all, it is I, Miles Best, and I'm already knowing that being a student can be stressful. You gotta balance homework, social pressures, problems at home, sports, and just anxiety about the state of the world, and it can all take a toll. But we here at Above the Noise want to make sure that all you students out there are taking care of your mental health this school year. So to help you keep on track, we made a playlist and compilation of some of our previous episodes around mental health in school. We hope you learn something as you watch, and remember, take care of yourselves out there. Let's face it, homework is never going to win any popularity contest. In fact, there's a whole genre of memes about how much people hate homework. I mean, just look, oh my God, there's so many of them. Look at all, there's so many memes. It's no secret that homework is a big source of stress in the daily lives of students. Assignments can feel so tedious when they take hours to do. And there's growing debate over the value of homework. It's not just about students being lazy. There's opponents that think it's an unnecessary stressor and actually contributes to inequity in education, particularly for low-income students. Today we're asking, how much homework in high school is too much? So in the US, there isn't really a standard amount of homework high school students get. It varies teacher by teacher, school by school. The amount even varies all over the world. Just look at this graph. Check it out. In the US, we get over twice as much homework as South Korea. South Korea's ranked the #1 best education system by a Pearson review. And well, we're number 17. And like, what's up with Italy over here? They're getting 8.7 hours per week, and they're number 25. Must be rough over there in Italy, man. Okay, now back to America. We figured it was pretty important to hear straight from students about this topic since they're the ones actually doing the homework. So we turned to our friends from Youth Beat in Oakland, California. They are student reporters with PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs. This is Jonathan, Olin,
Yo!
and Serena. They helped research, write, and produce this episode. First, I checked in with Jonathan, who's not exactly a slacker. He's on all city council and reporting this episode on top of all his regular homework. So Jonathan, what's all city council and what are you hearing from students?
All City Council is the student union for the Oakland School District, and we represent the 37,000 students who are within the public education system. Man, we are tired of doing homework. You know, a lot of students have obligations outside of school. There's students who've come to me and be like, yo, I can't go to this meeting because I have to work and do homework. There's some assignments that are online because teachers are using Google Classroom. Not everyone has access to technology, to a computer or a tablet. So how do you get that homework done and keep up with the workload when you don't have access to those materials?
Some teachers are starting to take notice. The reporters talked to Kathleen Bailey, a teacher at Oakland Technical High School in Oakland, California, who doesn't really assign her students any homework.
I just asked my students today how many of them have jobs. There were 9 students in one class that had jobs. There were 11 students in another. And if you're going home from school and you gotta get from one place to another in Oakland, you've gotta get to work, you get home at 10:30, and you're thinking about homework, that's just like a recipe for a mental breakdown, I think.
I don't really enjoy doing homework. You know, personally, I have a lot of extracurriculars that I participate in. Like I'm the Black Student Union president at Skyline. I'm the media director for All City Council Student Union, and I partake in KDOL Youth Beat. And so with all those different things going on for me after school, it gets hard for me to focus on just one thing. And I do realize academics are important, right? But I feel like these extracurriculars help me build as a person and also build out my resume.
I can see how it could be hard for students to figure out what to prioritize. So no homework is probably sounding pretty good to you right about now. But we have to acknowledge that homework isn't all bad. Take it from our Youth Beat student reporter, Olin.
There are actually a lot of studies that show there are benefits to doing homework.
Like this meta-analysis that looked at a whole bunch of research on homework from 1987 to 2003. The authors concluded that, with only rare exceptions, the relationship between the amount of homework students do and their achievement outcomes was found to be positive and statistically significant. This just means that homework helps students perform better. And in case y'all are wondering what a meta-analysis is, it's basically a study that looks at a lot of different studies in a systematic way.
But it might be that only a certain amount of homework is beneficial. We looked at a study that found that too much homework can actually hurt students.
Check this out. Researchers surveyed over 4,000 students in 10 high-performing wealthy high schools in California. The students surveyed averaged over 3 hours of homework a night. And the researchers found that more time spent on homework is associated with greater stress, more compromised health, and less time for family, friends, and other extracurricular pursuits. The authors cautioned against assigning heavy homework loads.
And the National Education Association and the National Parent-Teacher Association recommend the 10-minute rule when it comes to homework. This means students should receive only 10 minutes of homework per grade per night.
Sometimes my teacher would even tell me, oh, just take an hour to do this assignment. And I'm thinking, well, if I have 7 classes and each class tells me to do either 10 minutes to an hour, that's already an hour to like 7 hours I have to devote just to homework after school.
And it's not just the amount of time you're spending on homework. Some experts say that homework should have a clear connection to what students are learning. It just can't be busy work.
The main thing with homework, as far as I'm concerned, is that the kids got to know why they're doing it.
That's Bob Kelly. He's been a teacher for 21 years. He thinks homework can be a valuable tool for certain students and classes.
In my regular U.S. history class, we don't have homework. The only homework that they get is anything that they don't finish in class. If they're messing around or something like that, then they got to take it home and get it done before the next class. Whereas in my AP classes, they have to read 2 chapters a week, and they have to analyze those chapters. And so the whole idea is that they'll come to school understanding what we haven't talked about yet. They'll have a basic understanding, and then we take their basic understanding and we build off of it.
And this kind of rigorous homework in advanced classes can help students prepare for the intensity of classes that they'll have in college. But if these homework-heavy college prep classes best prepare students for college, where does that leave low-income students with conflicting obligations that can't complete their homework? How do you balance the potential benefits you get from completing homework with the real-world needs of students? Homework is tricky, man. You think you're lonely? Try being a Sacramento Kings fan. Ouch, that was kind of mean. Hey everyone, Miles Best here, journalist, host of Above the Noise, and occasionally John Legend's stunt double. You don't know that. It could definitely be true. But anyway, a lot of people have been saying to me, damn Miles, with this pandemic, life has gotten so lonely. But when I say lonely, I'm not talking about solitude or being alone. I'm talking about that feeling that you don't have any real meaningful relationships with other people, that deep in your bones loneliness. We are born alone, we die alone. But this is life during a pandemic, no? But loneliness was an epidemic before the pandemic. You see what I did there? And not to brag, but I'm something of a loneliness expert myself. But why, you might be asking? Why are we so lonely? And what can we do about it? All right, so quick personal story time. One of the loneliest periods in my life was when I moved from Oakland to Texas for my freshman year of high school. The transition to Texas life was just overwhelming and depressing. I hardly made any friends and I never really adjusted. And as a result, I isolated myself. So like even now to this day, whenever I'm feeling kind of down, I'll isolate myself and just kind of go into like this deep funk and just be lonely. Like I have to physically remind myself like, hey, you have friends, you have family, there's people that care about you. And no matter how valid this feeling is of loneliness, it'll pass, which is nuts, right? You know, it's like having to remind yourself to breathe or to eat or, you know, skipping the opening credits on whatever you're binging on Netflix. For a long time, my generation, the millennials, was considered the loneliest.
And the winner for loneliest generation goes to the millennials.
Oh my gosh, I totally wasn't expecting this. This is crazy. Okay, so first off, I wanna shout out my parents for just never encouraging me to do much of anything. Also, I wanna shout out our Wi-Fi connection. If it was any weaker than it was, I definitely would have been outside making friends, having the time of my life. And last but not least, I just wanna shout out just being very awkward in any social setting that I step into. Without those 3 things, I'd definitely have way more friends. So thank you so much. I love you all. Good night. That is, until we were bumped off the podium by Gen Z. Now research is saying they're the loneliest. And again, this was published before the pandemic ever happened. Now, check this out. I found this huge survey that's been given to over 1 million 15 and 16-year-old students across 37 countries every few years since 2000. And in this survey, there are 6 statements about loneliness at school. Things like, I feel like an outsider or left out at school, and I feel awkward and out of place in my school. And students have to rate each statement from 1, strongly disagree, to 4, strongly agree. The higher the number, the higher the loneliness. And guess what researchers found when they crunched the data? Most of the students were not lonely, and the subset that was stayed pretty much the same between 2000 and 2012. The only thing more consistent in the 2000s was racism. But from 2012 to 2018, it was a different story. While still in the minority, the number of lonely students nearly doubled. So in a span of 6 years, almost twice as many students felt lonely compared to the previous 12 years. Now that's a pretty massive increase in a short period of time. And again, this is years before the pandemic even hit. And this same kind of trend is playing out on a generational level too. A lot of research is showing that each generation is lonelier than the one that came before it. So Gen X is lonelier than the boomers. Millennials are lonelier than Gen X. And Gen Z is lonelier than them all. But don't worry, I'm sure the next generation, I'm pretty sure they're called Generation Alpha, will be lonelier than them all. So count your days, because it's coming. I can feel it. So the first thing that pops into my brain after reading all of this info is pretty obvious. Why? Why are we getting more and more lonely? Now, if you're familiar with how this show works, you know there's no simple, easy answers as to why we feel lonely. So to start answering them, I thought, why don't I ask Gen Z? Why do you think you have this rep of being lonely?
They grow up with this mentality that their problems are their own and that they'll just be an annoyance if they just tell their feelings to other people.
We don't really like to go out and socialize with people we don't know. We tend to just stick around with our friends that we've been with for years, or just mainly by ourselves.
With social media and like just being able to like communicate with someone like all the way across the world, that's freaking amazing. But it's not the same as to like making a one-on-one interaction and me having a conversation with someone.
I don't really get to interact with the outside world because I'm busy on social media in my room, instead of doing other productive things like maybe my homework or going outside for a walk or even talking to my family. And I've noticed that that makes us feel lonely.
I loved these responses, and they made me realize where I have to go next. The bathroom. Okay, and then after that, TikTok. That's where I found Justin Pooter. He talks about all things mental health, but he's also got a PhD in psychology and has his own counseling practice. So he's not just out here running his mouth without knowledge to back it up.
I'm kind of curious to know like what goes on in our brains, when we're experiencing loneliness. Like what are the long-term effects on our brain when we're experiencing that?
So what we know is the same neural networks that fire when you are in physical pain fire when you're lonely. So loneliness is painful. And there's a real reason for this, evolutionary speaking, that we are a social species. Like we have survived all these years, not because we just were born and ran out into the wild on our own. We're a tribal species. We very much form communities with other people. They help raise our young, they help protect us. So our brain has evolved in a way to tell us that if we are alone too long, this is painful and this is bad.
Now, this totally makes sense to me. I mean, think about it. For thousands of years, humans lived the hunter-gatherer lifestyle in small groups. Cooperation and communication were crucial to, not dying. And I've seen researchers refer to the feeling of loneliness as social pain. It's the brain's warning system telling you hey bruh, get back with your tribe, you're too far. Now, I'm sure you can see the problem with this, just like I can. We don't live that hunter-gatherer lifestyle anymore. Modern society has us moving away from family and friends to go to college and take jobs. Ew. A lot of us are working 8+ hour days in offices that leave us feeling disconnected. Also, ew. Now, I don't know about y'all, but it's been years since I sat around in open flame talking about the woolly mammoth I just took down for dinner. For me, it's more exchanging glances with my mom over takeout while we're both on our phones. I'm fluent in eyebrow now, if you were curious. So when my brain is screaming, Loneliness! It's not such an easy fix. Modern society has been around for a couple hundred years, but our brains are still designed for how we lived for thousands of years before that. But remember that study I talked about earlier? The one saying that teens had this loneliness spike from 2012 to 2018? Well, something big must have happened in the last 10 years to create that. No, it wasn't Jay-Z cheating on Beyonce. And that's where this whole social media / smartphone explanation comes into play. Basically, 2012 is the first year when the majority of people had access to a smartphone. Social media like Facebook also hit critical mass. So you had this perfect storm of two huge cultural things that constantly demanded our attention 24/7. And it spread all over the globe. And you know the story from there. People, especially young people, started spending less time interacting in person and more time using digital media. And a lot of times that just doesn't satisfy the in-person connections that our brains are hungry for. Like my brain is telling me that I'm hungry for a burrito right now. Steak, extra cheese, yeah. And even if you're gonna be like, you know what? I'm deleting all my social media accounts and I'm never texting ever again. That doesn't automatically mean you're on your way to having friends in real life. It just doesn't work like that. Hi, I'd like to buy 2 best friends, please.
I'm sorry, sir. That's not how life works.
What? Why?
You can't just buy friends, sir.
When has buying people ever been a problem? Gosh. I mean, there's research showing that at the group level, there's just less opportunities for face-to-face interactions as we spend more and more time in front of our screens. So that's gonna affect you no matter how much or how little you're into using your phone, because literally everyone else is also using their phone. Now, I wanna be clear. This is a theory on why Gen Z loneliness rates have gone up. It's supported by data, but by no means is it 100% the reason, case closed. I say this a lot on this show, but isolating one single reason for why something as complicated as the emotion of loneliness is on the rise is just not gonna happen. There are so many variables at play that you can never absolutely be certain. Like, let's look at the term social media. Saying social media is causing loneliness is a tough sell because social media is not one thing. Now, we did a video on this that you should totally check out because, you know, I love us and I know you love us too. But basically, when it comes to social media,
what we know through the research is that it really depends how you use it, why you're using it, what kind of information you're absorbing on social media or the internet at large, and how you're feeling through that process.
Like, are you passively scrolling through your feed, getting more and more annoyed at people like me? Or are you actively using it to connect with other people? So using social media one way might make you feel more lonely, but using it another way might help you feel less lonely. Also, another important thing Justin told me was that there's just way less stigma around talking about mental illness with young people compared to older people. So, like, maybe the students on that survey felt more comfortable telling the truth about feeling lonely than people who took the survey before. See, that's also a problem with survey data in general. So keep that in the back of your mind. So we've covered why we might be feeling more lonely, but how do we deal with loneliness? Because if you've been feeling lonely for a while, it's not so easy to all of a sudden just, connect with people. Hi, I'd like to immediately connect with 2 best friends, please.
I'm sorry, sir. I think you have the wrong number. This is a Wendy's?
Why do you keep doing this to me? Taking that first step to reach out can be daunting and can bring up a lot of feels.
What we know is that people who have been lonely for a long time, they can start developing symptoms that look a lot like anxiety and depression, and people can get depressed and become anxious. When you first go reconnect with people after a bout of loneliness, likely you're going to have more of this stress hormone because it feels threatening, it feels different. But some people, when they feel the rise of stress, the rise of anxiety, they'll think avoid, like get me out of here. But it's important to normalize that if we go into that avoidance, if we just move away from people chronically, we'll stay in the same state.
But Justin says we have to fight through it. We can work on the connections we already have with the people around us. Maybe that's a classmate or a coworker or a neighbor or a family member. Connecting with these people in a real, authentic way is key to getting out of the loneliness trap. And sometimes that requires us to connect with new people outside of our tribe. So, something like volunteering somewhere, or picking up a new sport, or starting a new hobby. Anything that can get us in the room with people to connect with. Hey everyone, Miles Best here, journalist, functioning imposter, and host of Above the Noise. Yep, you heard that right, functioning imposter. Or at least sometimes I feel like an imposter. Now don't get me wrong, I love hosting this show and work hard to make it as good as it can be. But still, every once in a while when I'm sitting down at the computer and about to start writing the next episode, I get this nagging feeling that I'm not talented enough to pull it off. That I'm this fraud and I'll be found out at any minute. Now, before y'all go adding comments to reassure me that you like our episodes and that we're doing great, you need to understand that there is a name for this feeling, imposter syndrome. It's a pattern of thought that can take hold of your brain and really mess you up. It can dial up your anxiety, contribute to feelings of depression, and just kind of leave you feeling isolated and different from everyone you go to school or work with. Now, I looked at the research, and imposter syndrome can affect all different kinds of people. You can be a first-year college student who arrives on campus thinking, was my acceptance just one big mistake? Or you can be a super famous, super successful person who no one would possibly think could feel like an imposter. Like Einstein, he's reported to have said, and I quote, "The exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me feel ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler." Basically, the smartest person in any room ever didn't feel like he belonged there sometimes. And that's what's so weird about imposter syndrome. Being successful doesn't make you immune. Instead, the more success you have, the more fuel there is to believe you're just fooling people into thinking you know what you're doing. So I want to know, why do we feel like imposters sometimes, and what do we do about it? The first important thing to understand is that imposter syndrome is not its own diagnosable condition. You won't find it in the DSM, which covers all the different categories of mental health disorders. That's because it's usually thought of as a symptom of a larger problem, like depression or anxiety. Because of this, mental health professionals actually prefer the term imposter phenomenon. The word syndrome just kind of makes it sound like an illness. Now, I was really curious to understand how these imposter thoughts pop into our brains, and that's how I learned about what researchers call the imposter cycle. Now, drop a comment if you can relate to this. Let's say you've got this big project or assignment you gotta do for school or for work. That plants the seed of anxiety and self-doubt that you're not gonna get it done, or you're not gonna do it well. As the deadline gets closer, you get down to business and seriously over-prepare. Or, if you're like me, you procrastinate. Then enter a frenzy of preparation at the last possible moment. Either way, you get the project done. You even do it well. You ace the assignment, or you get a congratulations from your boss. Clearly, it was a success. But a person with imposter syndrome ignores and pushes away that positive feedback. It wasn't skill or talent or intelligence that created the success. It was the over-the-top effort or sheer luck. That leads to self-doubt and feeling like a fake. And when it's time for the next project, the cycle starts all over again, trapping you in this feeling of being an imposter. Now, I can totally relate to this cycle. I've definitely been caught in it before while writing Above the Noise episodes. Shh. And that made me want to understand what specific kinds of thought patterns or personality traits might put someone at risk for feeling like an imposter. So I did some digging and came across the author Valerie Young, who's considered an expert when it comes to understanding imposter syndrome. And she lays out what she considers to be 5 main imposter types. Now, you can be one or any combo of them. First up, type 1 is a classic, the perfectionist. They set super high expectations for themselves, so even if they succeed at 99% of their goal, they think they failed because of that 1% that wasn't successful. Any mistake, no matter how small, makes them question their abilities and creates self-doubt, and that can allow the imposter syndrome to sneak in. Type 2 is the expert. They need to know every piece of info before they get started on a project, and they tend to base their self-worth on how much they know. So if they don't know something, that can make them feel incompetent, which can open the door to feeling like an imposter. Now, type 3 is the natural genius. Everything's supposed to come easy. It's supposed to be effortless. If they have to work hard at something or it takes a while to get it, that means they're not smart or talented enough, which for them is proof that they're an imposter. Type 4 is the soloist. They have to do everything on their own. It all has to be done 100% unassisted. Asking for help is a sign of weakness and might expose them as a failure or a fraud. And finally, we have type 5, the superhero. They have to push themselves to work harder than everyone else to prove they're not an imposter. But overworking is just a cover for their insecurities that they're not smart or talented enough. And that can lead to, yep, you guessed it, feeling like an imposter. I know you gotta relate to at least one of these. For me, I'm a combination of the soloist and the natural genius. You know, I hate asking for help and I hate having to try too hard to do something. Now, most of the research that I found on imposter syndrome focuses on the individual. And I mean, that makes sense. We're talking about feelings and thoughts that happen in our individual brains. To a certain extent, the genes we're born with wire us in a particular way. And then our unique experiences from childhood up through being an adult add on to that. But there is research showing that factors outside of an individual person can be important too, like being a part of an underrepresented group. For example, a woman in a male-dominated profession, or the first person in their family to go to college. Feeling a sense of belonging helps with confidence, but if there aren't people around who look like you, or sound like you, or have similar experiences, it can be easier to feel like you don't belong.
I think a very good example of that is my computer science class, where I heard people talking like, oh, I was just gonna ask my dad to look at this code for me because he's a software engineer. And I'm sitting over here struggling with the same problem set, but I have a dad that's a truck driver and always busy and not able to even understand English. So that difference is really there. And once again, that feeling of I'm not belonging here, or I'm not built to succeed here, or I'm not designed to be here, definitely continues to be a thought in your head.
That's Steven, a first-generation low-income college student and the son of Chinese immigrants. That background contributed to his imposter syndrome during his first year at Stanford and almost prevented him from pursuing a major in computer science. STEM courses in college can be really competitive, and most research shows that the more competitive the environment, the greater the chance that imposter syndrome can pop up. But that research also shows that first-gen students specifically are more likely to experience imposter syndrome than students that had one or both of their parents attend college.
It's like, oh my God, I'm so behind. Oh my God, I don't have any preparation for this. I took one computer science class in high school. I'm not gonna be able to compare myself to any of these students. How am I able to succeed in the student body that's already so far ahead? So for me, I just had to push back computer science for such a long time, which ended up being my potential major now. But just that imposter syndrome, just like computer science, is not going to be built for me. It's not going to let me succeed in something I just don't fit into.
And in case you're wondering what imposter type Steven most identifies with,
so there are a few I kind of relate to, but definitely the strongest one is a soloist. I hated asking for help. I still kind of do, because I mean, it just, for me, the feeling is like you're revealing weakness. You're revealing that you don't know what you're doing. And that's something you definitely don't want to show, right?
Now, I wish I could offer you some super quick, super easy solution to boost your confidence and kick your imposter syndrome to the curb forever. Hey, Miles, you're awesome. You're smart enough. You're good enough. And darn it, people like you. But I think it's important to realize that the goal is not to never feel like an imposter. Instead, it's to reduce the impact so the feelings don't hijack your brain. You want imposter moments, not an imposter life. One way to do this is to think about how you generally frame the beliefs you have about yourself. If you have a fixed mindset, then you believe you have a finite level of intelligence, talent, and raw creative ability that can't be changed. It's carved in stone. Now that can lead you to avoid challenges, give up when things get hard, and even feel threatened when others have success. A fixed mindset can allow imposter syndrome to take hold. Now a growth mindset, that's the opposite. Your beliefs about yourself aren't stuck at a certain level forever. They can change and grow. Failure isn't evidence that you're not intelligent or talented. It's an opportunity to learn and stretch your abilities. Now, does that mean that everyone with this mindset thinks that they could be the next Einstein or Stephen Hawking? No, that would probably be delusional. But the growth mindset means that in the end, a person's true potential is unknown. And that is kryptonite for imposter syndrome. Another tried and true method to combat imposter syndrome is to talk to other people about imposter syndrome. Remember, feeling like a fraud requires you to think that you're fundamentally different and not as good as the people around you. If those other people also feel like an imposter sometimes, you might be less likely to feel like an imposter too. Now, colleges are starting to understand that this is really important for their first generation students. Believe it or not, 1 out of every 3 drops out after 3 years. So, colleges are creating peer-to-peer support groups so imposter syndrome doesn't stay hidden. And that really helps Steven.
One of the best parts of being a first generation low income student is the community. And even within the student body itself, we're very open about our backgrounds. We're very passionate and prideful of where we come from. And being able to express feelings like imposter syndrome, but among a variety of different things, and know that someone else is dealing with the exact same issues you are, and that is not just you, it helps bring a bit of comfort to you. This is like, now I'm not the only one struggling. I'm not the only one feeling this way. Maybe I can do this class. Maybe I should try to go into this field. And even if I find a moment where I'm like, I don't know if I'm built for this, I just can't do it, there are people near me that I can go back to.
It seems like our culture is obsessed with popularity. Almost every teen movie from at least the 1980s features some type of popular group. And today, it can feel like there's even more of a fixation on being well-liked than ever before. Wait, I only got 47 likes on my last Instagram post? But I just got my hair cut. I thought I looked good. So now I'm wondering, how does being popular in high school affect your life after you graduate? To answer this question, it's important to define popularity because there's more than one type. There's status, and there's likability. Status is what you probably think of when you play montages of teen movies in your head.
Tattoos are strictly forbidden. Sorry.
Oh wait, that was just me? But for real, it's those stereotypes we always see in the media, like the student body president, the head cheerleader, or the partiers. You know, the people who everyone knows about. They're the ones with a lot of power and influence. The other type of popularity is likability, which is basically how well liked you are. And according to psychologists, this is how popularity is defined when we are children. In elementary school, the most popular kids tend to be the kind ones, the first ones to share their toys or help their friends when they fall down. But something changes when people hit adolescence. All of a sudden, status tends to become more important. This has to do with how our brains change when those oh-so-wonderful puberty hormones kick in. Young teens start to seek out social power and influence, often engaging in relational aggression. Things like gossiping, cyberbullying, and excluding others in order to seem cooler. When teens achieve status by behaving this way, their brains reward them, telling them that they've succeeded. But studies have found that people who are popular in high school actually have a more difficult time with romantic, professional, and social relationships when they become adults. This might make sense when you think about a movie like Mean Girls. Having status doesn't necessarily mean you're more well-liked, just that people are scared of you.
Do you know what everyone says about you? They say that you're a homeschooled jungle freak who's a less hot version of me. Yeah.
And there's more. It's not just relationships that can suffer because of popularity. Popular kids also are more likely to face issues with depression, addiction, and have run-ins with the law, even just a few years out of high school. For example, in one study, a group of psychologists followed 184 teens from ages 13 to 23, checking in with them periodically over those 10 years. That's called a longitudinal study, by the way. And they found that teens who engage in pseudo-mature or adult-like behaviors like, drinking alcohol or having sex, were in fact much more likely to have problems with depression and addiction by the time they were in their 20s. Why is this? Well, it could have something to do with continuity theory, which is the idea that adults continue the same behavior they did as kids. It's thought that teens engage in risky behavior to seem cooler to their friends, so as they get older, they might have to do more extreme things to impress their friends. For example, someone who has a drink or two in high school to seem cool might feel the need to drink a lot more to continue to seem cool in college. So if you're not in the cool crowd, you might be feeling pretty good about yourself right now. But if you don't have any friends, well, that doesn't bode well for later in life either. A recent study shows that the other type of popularity, likability, is an important indicator for success in your 20s. This time, a group of psychologists set up another longitudinal study and followed 169 people from when they were 15 to when they were 25. They found that teens who prioritized strong, close friendships over status were more likely to have higher self-worth and less likely to show signs of depression or anxiety. Other studies have found that people who are likable early in life tend to make more money and be happier in their careers. The researchers think that this is because being able to maintain close and strong friendships early also allow you to do so throughout your life. But keep in mind, there are some limitations to this study. First of all, the sample size is fairly small, and it proves correlation. Two things happen to be going on at the same time, not causation. We can prove one thing definitely causes another. So while psychologists have their best theories and guesses about why having strong friendships in high school make you happier in your 20s, they can't exactly prove why this is the case.
Thanks for watching. I hope you gained something from these episodes. Before anything else, just know that your mental state and your well-being matters. Take it from me. You can't be your best self if you don't take care of yourself. Building a way to develop healthy work-life balances now can set you up for a happy and successful life in the future. So don't put your own needs off. And if there's anything else around this topic that you want us to cover in the future, please just let us know in the comments below. As always, I'm your host, Miles Best. Peace out.